Welcome to Someone Has to Be Brave, the podcast where we delve into the everyday, courageous hearts and minds that dare to make a difference. I am your host, Andrea, joined each week by our homies. That's you, our listeners, reminding us that we are divinely gathered and intertwined in this journey of bravery. Today, we explore stories of extraordinary courage and confront challenges that require true bravery. Please remember, while we share inspiring stories, this podcast is not a substitute for a professional therapist. If you find yourself in need of support, and even before you do, you're encouraged to seek help from a licensed clinician. Be aware that we may discuss sensitive topics that could evoke strong emotions. And speaking of transformative journeys, keep an eye out for my upcoming book, 3 Girls, Alchemizing Trauma. Now in its final editing stages. It's a deep dive into the resilience of the human spirit, an honor and a tribute to my first love, my big sister Gloria. Namaste, homies. The topic for today is trauma lasts in family lineage. For I am going to begin today with reading the tentative disclaimer for my book. And then we are going to talk about generational trauma and cultivating resilience, which we could describe as generational gifts. And we can also describe the trauma as gifts too, because pain often propels us forward. And I want to talk about epigenetics. And I'm going to begin with the person that I think I share the most DNA with, and that would be my dad.
Okay. Do you mind me asking you what epigenetics means?
Epigenetics is the study of how changes in a cell's chemistry without changing the DNA sequence can affect gene activity and expression.
Okay, so we're talking about with this trauma, they don't understand why things are the way they are because we're carrying these genes, this DNA from person to person. You said generation to generation.
For 5, up to 5. Science has shown that.
Right. Why does DeMarcus act like this? Just like his daddy. And then DeMarcus's son, if nothing is done about it, it continues on. So go ahead. You just gave me something.
It's important to know these changes are heritable, meaning they can be passed. They can be passed from one generation to the next. So I want to end with that. So I want to come back to that.
Now, let me ask you this too, because you got me thinking now. Can the father pass this down to all of his children? Or does it just go to one? Or can it go to all of them?
It goes to all of them. Wow. And the grandchildren.
Wow.
And the great-grandchildren.
That makes sense.
Because we're saying 5 generations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
5. But again, epigenetics is a gift because these changes are heritable, meaning that they can be passed from one generation to another. And what we learn about cell structure through science is that cell structure is the smartphone for the body. So in like Christianity, the word says, as a man thinketh, so shall he be, right?
Right.
Because in mental health, we always talk about cognitive behavioral therapy. And why is that important? Because cognition means a thought. So for me, I continue to expand and live the full breadth of life because I know there are facts and there is the truth. And the facts and the truth might not always match. So the facts might be that one came from humble beginnings. The facts might be that one wasn't well educated. The facts might be that one was born with one leg longer than the other, just for an example, right? Those
Right.
might be the facts. But the truth is, love is the only thing that's real. The truth is, abundance is our birthright. The truth is, love is our birthright. The truth is, freedom is our birthright. And so that's the text across most religious doctrine, is that though we be physically enslaved, we can choose to be mentally liberated. Did I just weave a blanket and connect all that, what I was trying to?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to not take a lot of time and share a few pieces of my why. So here's the disclaimer for my book. I am going to read a little bit of it. This book delves into complex and sensitive topics, including suicide, self-injurious behavior, addiction, sexual abuse, assault, and racism. Readers are cautioned that discussions within its pages may evoke strong emotions and trigger personal reflections. We acknowledge the potential distress these themes may cause and encourage readers to approach this material with self-awareness and care. If you find yourself struggling with any of these issues, we urge you to seek support from qualified professionals or trusted individuals. Remember, you are not alone and help is available. I want to start off today by talking again, as I said, about generational trauma, right? Because again, everything that I say is data driven. Like I've gone and read a lot, like spent a lot of money learning.
Yeah.
And thank goodness, because that has allowed me to be free. So I realized that I'm so much like my biological father. And I take that as like the highest of high compliments. And I understand how generational trauma can plant a seed and bloom and blossom many generations beyond like where we even started. So when I think about my biological father, just to bring in some lineage, he lost his biological father at a young age. However, he did come from a two-parent home. He came from a two-parent home. His father was a farmer. His father was a man among men. And he had come from a long lineage of farmers and people who had a lot of, I guess, respect in the community. My dad was one of, I'm not sure how many siblings he had, at least 7. And they all had the same father. In fact, his father and his father's siblings all purchased acres of land for all of their families, like their children and their children's children and their children's children's children to live on.
Right.
So much so that this community where my quote father is from is like, you know, it's an auntie literally next door. It's like grandma, like, but everybody said, and so the road is named after them.
Wow.
So I believe him losing his father at a young age and seeing his mother, because this was before Jim Crow, because he was born in the 1940s.
Okay.
And so seeing his mother have to raise all these children single-handedly, I think it really caused him to be a highly introspective and insightful person. And so he was prime pickings for my mother, who is the 4th child of 7 children. She's the third girl and the first child to be questioned around whether or not we all have the same father. And she was raised primarily in a single parent home, although she was the 4th child and 3 more children came after her. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she was born in a big city and then relocated to the small town where my father resided. And they were actually girlfriend and boyfriend from middle school. And how do I know? Because I was a person who always would, quote unquote, plunder. That's what my grandma called it, plundering.
Right.
And I came upon a picture that I have actually of my mother when she was in middle school. And she had written on the back of the picture to my father, like, which is to William Robert Wright, like the love of my life. And it said something like grade 6. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I have great compassion for him because I'm like, dang, he had her attached to him, you know, since they were in middle school. She ended up getting pregnant while in high school, and that's where my first sibling came from. And then I was the youngest who came when, you know, after they were married and they owned a brick house, you know, with a chimney off the family property, right? And I was born in 71, so they were really doing some things.
Right.
Now, the reason why, for many reasons, one of the reasons why I've written this book is to go back and correct some things in history. My father, I've heard him described as the town alcoholic. And bravo to the person who told me that in 11th grade, because it made me very curious and it made me really want to know more about my father. And fortunately, I did get to learn some things about him before he transitioned in July of 2001. And of course, I did what any unsettled, not well-raised person would do, baby. I went to grad school. Like as soon as my daddy died, I was in grad school, and praise be unto the Most High that I finished.
Yes.
However, I now better understand that who is my father more and more each day because, again, talking about generational trauma, of course, I procreated with a female version of my unhealthy parent because that's what we do, right? We all live in like this petri dish. That's what I call it. I used to be a school teacher. We all live in this petri dish of a science project from the moment of conception until we're like, quote unquote, grown and leave home. And that's if we have a healthy individuation and separation. But sometimes some of us come from spaces that are toxic AF. So if you recreate your petri dish of a science project and it was healthy, Air 5, right? You just go on, you create generational wealth, right? You just, you have a good life.
Right.
But if you recreate the science project of the beginnings of your life that were a not so good science project, see how that recreates some generational trauma and continues to perpetuate generational trauma? Okay. Yeah. So this is a story to my dad. So daddy, the coolest man I ever knew. My daddy succumbed to big tobacco, prohibition, having children with an unstable woman, and heartache. However, he'll always be my forever choice for a father. My father left this realm, I'll say, because the world could not handle us both healthy being here at the same time. But baby, this I know for sure. My daddy is proud and has always been proud of me. To that point, he visited the first brick home I ever bought. He met both of my raggedy arse spouses, no cap. He loved both of my children. He even drove them to the local hangout to meet his friends. So I know in that regard, life came full circle for him. I trusted my daddy, not with money, but with my heart. And the gag, my daddy thought I was cool. His baby girl was a soldier. She lived in Germany. She spoke the truth freely and with love. My daddy cut up. You heard me?
Mm.
Now they call it capping. We just called it cutting a fool. My daddy taught me who to trust in the family on both sides, not by giving me directions, but by telling me stories. I believe he did this because he knew I was always listening. My daddy loved fatback, the hard part, and by default, pork rinds and fish caught by his own hand. Hence, fatback or quote unquote fat, his nickname known for miles around. My daddy was a renegade. He drove 18-wheelers before civil rights, and his best friend and quote unquote brother was a white man. Two good old South Carolina boys who understood one another, and what they could not explain, the bottle they shared spoke for them. My daddy was funny as hell. He died under hospice, which is normal, but he gave those hospice nurses a time because he was on oxygen and smoked. Because of him, I became a hospice social worker. I once had a patient who was on oxygen and smoked, and low key, that was my favorite patient. All of my hospice patients who smoked and had oxygen were my faves. Oh, did I mention my daddy would get his oxygen tank in his gold Ford truck, light his cigarette, and drive off going to tend to business? My aunt would be pissed, but I'd be like, you show him, daddy. And same with my patients. Like, y'all drive when there's no traffic, you hear me? Or I'd feign ignorance to the nurses. I'd swear at times I'd not even seen a vehicle. I trusted my daddy with my most precious gifts, my offspring, and they loved Papa. A name that the three of them had come up with, I suppose. My daughter still speaks of my daddy to this day, and so does my son. So I did well in this regard. My daddy always announced my arrival. He'd say, baby girl, with his deep radio-ready voice. The ladies loved my dad, and he never, ever disrespected a woman, ever. I didn't have the words to share the toxic relationship of a marriage I was in, which is probably best because my daddy kept a rifle and a tackle box with fishing knives. Some shit he didn't discuss, and disrespect of his girls was one. However, he was a gentleman, raised well, so he only went where he was invited. I never invited him into my toxic mess until I left, and man, he protected me. Now I'm clearer and his deep understanding of my pain. During the time of my father's transition, we grew so close. I remember being able to call him anytime, day or night, all while he was tackling lung cancer. He downplayed the severity. His transition fractured my soul, and I found my eyes raining because we didn't get to cuddle like dads and daughters do. We didn't get to play hide and seek. I didn't get to fish with him. I didn't get to tell him I loved him as much as I'd liked. I didn't get to tell him how cool he was. My father was every bit of a man's man. He could bottle and sell manhood. My father never struck me. He never called me out of my name. He was a funny dude. Part of my saving grace is having my daddy's DNA and my daddy's sister-in-law as my auntie. She is why I write these words, and she is why I know I'm actually worthy of love. More to follow.
Nice. Good writing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what my editors have said. So I speak for men, and I always have, who have been not taken seriously because they were men as it relates to their children. And I like to, when necessary, make them aware of organizations that actually help, because I didn't really have a healthy birther. And then I had children with someone who was like my birther, which then negatively impacted how my children were raised. So there is, if you say my father, that's one generation, me, two generations, my children, 3 generations, and my children, one of them has a child, and then one of them has a fur baby. So that's 4 generations. So I've actually been able to, in my lifetime, look and see the truth that trauma does stay in our family lineage for up to 5 generations. So here's what I've been challenging, and this is why I've written this book, not to cry your eyes out and be like, oh my God, she's a sadomasochist. Has she not anything good to say? Well, no, everything I have to say is good, because that's the beauty of epigenetics. See, epigenetics means we can inherit those DNA markers that are our family members, right?
Yeah.
So we can have type 1 diabetes. However, we also can have resilience, right? And so we have someone whose name is Dr. Bruce Lipton, who tells us about epigenetics and gives an example of enslaved Black folks, having been fed sort of like slop, right? And so now present day, we have a higher instance of hypertension and diabetes type 2. He also showed, and other scientists have shown, the connection between those that were involved in the Holocaust and were starved, right? And then their ancestors like migrated to, I think, like the Netherlands and Amsterdam, and how even though here we are in present day, none of those folks, for the most part, have been starved. However, they have a high instance of diabetes type 1. See how that works? But if we go back to cognition, right, which is everything begins with a thought. And we also know that the cells in our bodies are miniature smartphones. And so smartphones are used for us to program, right? We are by way programming ourselves by what we say.
The new science, which is now coming around, is called epigenetic control. And what that means, you understand the prefix epi means above. So you say epidermis, that means the layer above the dermis skin. If I say epigenetic control, literally it says control above the genes. And this is the new science. And why is it profound? Because when you teach genetic control, you teach victimization. You didn't pick the genes as far as we know. The genes control your traits. You can't change the genes, so you become victimized by your heredity. And the new science, epigenetic control, reveals how your response to the environment, as you change your response to the environment, you change the fate of your cells, just like in the Petri dish. That makes you a master, because you are the one that has the opportunity to change your perception and response, so therefore you're the one that controls your genes.
By what we think, by what we eat, by what we ingest. So the fact might be that you have a father who was an alcoholic, so you could have genetic predisposure to alcoholism, but that does not have to be the truth. So Aretha Franklin, whose father was a great minister, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
even had a TV ministry. Like, wasn't she pregnant at 12?
I'm not sure, but I know
She was. She was pregnant as a teenager.
Yeah, because I know the teenager, I think CL is Reverend CL Franklin. I think he made her leave the house or something like that.
Well, I don't know about that,
Okay.
but where was she all the time? She was at church.
Right.
So we often, and this is why we're having these types of conversations, because we often talk about predators in white vans, but we don't talk about predators in the family. And we know that one rotten apple can spoil the whole bunch. As farmers, we know that.
Yeah.
If you get a bag of fruit from the grocery store and there's one rotten piece in there and you don't check it, the whole bag is gone. And so it's about which fox we feed, because we're constantly making an investment into an account. Which account is it? Is it an account for propelling yourself forward, or is it an account for some things that you might have to double around for because of that choice? So that's all I got.
Sounds good.
PJ, let me tell you this and I'm going to shut up.
Yeah.
Did you know that there are generational seeds? Like, did you know, brethren, that you can go online and order collard green seeds from like the area where because I'm a farmer in my mind, like you can order collard green seeds or corn seeds. Like you can order seeds that are from back in the day.
Wow.
Is that not amazing?
That's amazing.
So if you can order seeds from the freaking 1800s, honey, can we not cultivate the fact that some women came to this country enslaved and had enough wisdom to make their braids be maps and have enough wisdom to put rice in between their braids because they was like, well, we're going to need to eat wherever we need to go. Like there's resilience in our bones.
That's
like
right.
Kendrick Lamar say, it's royalty, 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 royalty in my DNA.
That's right.
That's all I got.
Wow. Next week, we're going to be back, y'all, with another episode of Somebody Has to Be Brave. Andrea Sennington, clinical therapist. And you can find all the information to contact her in the description in this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing. And we're going to be studying this week.